Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Arizona Monthly Housing Market Update. I am Katie, and this is
Matt and
Ryan. Happy July, everyone.
Happy July, and welcome
Happy
back,
July.
team. I can't believe we are already halfway through the year. It is absolutely crazy. We are in the thick of summer, guys, and I don't know about you, but the Phoenix housing market seems to be sending some mixed signals right now. I don't know, especially if you're reading the headlines. It's kind of easy to get the wrong impression. So in this episode, I would, as always, would love to dig into what we're actually seeing on the ground, inventory levels, seasonal shifts. Ryan, what's happening in your office in terms of new applications coming in, buyer demand, seller concessions, mortgage activity, all the things, all the indicators, right? So let's dive right into it. Ryan, take it away as you always do. What's been happening in your office?
Yeah. I wanted to do a rate update because a lot has happened, since our last update. The biggest news is from June 17th when the United States and Iran, put together a 14-point framework to really continue the ceasefire and have a toll-free reopening of the Strait of Hormuz for 60 days. So it's not a permanent peace agreement, there's still a lot of negotiating to do, and random attacks are still happening, but the framework was successful to open up the Strait of Hormuz, which really dropped oil prices. Before the war in Iran, oil was at $72 a barrel. It spiked. I was looking at it. It was $120 in March, one of the biggest jumps on record. But now with this agreement, it dropped significantly. Well, I think we could all see that at the gas pump. It's roughly $70 now, basically pre-war levels. So this is great news for mortgage rates. We saw an improvement, but the market's still pretty cautious because this is temporary. If there's any cracks or setbacks, that could reverse quickly. So they're just keeping an eye on that. The other big news was Kevin Warsh, our new Fed chair. He had his first meeting last month. We've been getting a lot of calls and emails asking about it because, as expected, the Fed, they didn't change mortgage rates. They didn't decrease them. They didn't raise them. But the big news was really the change in tone. Early this year in our updates that we were doing in January and February, the Fed was really hinting at cutting rates this year, but now half its officials are actually thinking about increasing them at the second half of the year. Why is that? It's because we did see a spike in inflation, with oil prices. It's 4.2% right now is where inflation is. And, the Fed is clear they want to be at 2%. That's always been their goal. And Kevin Warsh, he reiterated that, that's the Fed's number one goal is getting inflation under control. So, this meeting and the possible rate hikes really kind of held rates relatively steady, even with oil prices dropping as much as we've seen it. But the good news is, the lower prices we're having in oil, it should help future inflation numbers, So this recent drop, could change the tone of future meetings. So, that'll be the focus really in the second half of the year, this, hopefully a permanent agreement in the Middle East, oil prices hopefully continuing to stay steady or even dropping more, and how that will impact inflation and how the Fed will react to it. So that's all what we're going to be keeping an eye on and keeping you all updated for the second half of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's important information. And I know that it's recent news, but are you seeing more buyers? Are you feeling like buyers are a bit more confident today than maybe a month ago, 2 months ago? Or are they still taking that we'll just wait and see approach? Or, maybe they're just motivated by life events, like they have to get into something right now kind of thing,
Yeah. I think some of them are still kind of in the wait and see, especially at the beginning of the year. Just my office, we refinanced a lot of our past clients because we did see a good improvement in rates, but we still had a lot of people who were kind of on the fence because, it was reported in the news that President Trump was going to pick a new Fed chair, and a lot of people felt like he was going to drop rates pretty quickly. But so everybody was pretty excited for a new Fed chair to be picked and his first meeting. So I think everybody was a little disappointed that, after the meeting, they said we're keeping it steady and may even hike it now. I know, with oil prices and inflation going up, they had to kind of pivot a little bit. So I think that was a little discouraging to some buyers because they were expecting lower rates after, the change in Fed chairs. But, there is some still optimism. Oil prices affect everything, the cost of everything, especially travel. So, seeing some optimism on that side, at least over the past couple of weeks, the tone, has really changed. We feel like with some of our buyers and activity has been picking up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I've been having more conversations as well. And I know that we have said this on the show before. Some of the conversations, the buyers are just, they're okay. No, I don't want to use the word okay with the rates where they are right now, but they're just used to it. They're just like, "Hey, it is what it is," kind of thing, right? Are you seeing that too?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes I think it's more stability of rates that's more important. It's the wild swings up and down that really kind
Right.
of round the market. But if we're kind of staying in consistent range and it's still historically better than we normally have seen, I think that's kind of what buyers like to see. And that stability has really helped them start moving forward.
Yeah, agreed. What about seller concessions? We're still seeing a strong amount of seller concessions on our end of things. Are you seeing that with your buyers as well?
I'm glad you're asking that because we did take a look over the past couple of months to see how it's been affected, especially with higher rates. That we saw a little bit of a jump with oil prices and everything. And so we were seeing contracts coming in, and more of those, I would say 70% of what we have are showing concessions now. And that's really helped our buyers significantly, lowering their initial cost of getting into a home. But most importantly, if we have some extra concessions, they're using that to buy down the interest rate. So even though we're
Yeah.
not where we want to be with interest rates, with a little bit of help from the seller, you could really get there with temporary buy downs or permanent buy downs. So we're doing a lot of those right now.
We're seeing a ton of it too. Matt, I'm assuming in your day to day, you're having these discussions as well. You're seeing concessions come across your desk too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really good thing. When you're in a buyer's market, you want that buyer's market to have enough incentive for the buyers to feel like, hey, this is something we should use to move forward versus be fearful of. So if we were in a market that was kind of stagnant, there was inventory growing, but sellers weren't able to give these buyers the concessions that they need. I think that would just be that one last ingredient that would prevent them from taking that step to purchasing.
Yeah.
So, and I think that those stories, just like the stories of when a market turns, it spreads like lemmings, you know what I mean? Where everyone picks up the message and they hear it from their friends. We got this house that we got all these concessions paid for, and then it kind of plants that seed for whoever else might be considering to buy to say, you know what, this might be the right time.
Mm.
I also think, based on what Ryan was saying, we where we were at 60 days ago, in the middle of a war that we've kind of been, our generation, we've heard this fear of going to war with Iran, since before, we officially went into Iraq, even in the 90s. And it was this big fear. And we always kind of were like, what's going to happen? Is that World War III? And you really look at that generation it affected, seeing that this is who's buying homes right now. So I think it's really affected them on this confidence level to say we are like now at pretty much war with this country that we've been told for the last 25 to 30 years that this is World War III material. And then you add in the volatility of back and forth, peace agreement, no peace agreement, over the last 30 days. And I think that really kind of shook people. But now I think they have, they definitely have confidence. I think they see the light. I think they're looking at their own lives and what's happening with them financially. And I think that's what we're seeing.
I want to share some more information about seller concessions. Of course, I have a slide for you guys. I know, shocker. And I'd love to get your take on it, both of your takes on it, actually. But first, Ryan, so this was taken as of June 23rd. So this is pretty fresh data right here. And this is showing the percent of closings with seller paid concessions noted. And this is going to be a snapshot of the last 30 days. So 30 days prior to the 23rd. And I thought that it was really eye-opening to see that the 300 to 500,000 market is seeing the most concessions right now. I mean, over 50%, a good chunk over 50%. And in fact, in 350 to 400, we're seeing 67%. with concessions, and your average concession is about a little over 10,000, almost 11,000, which is up. A couple of months ago, I think it was a flat 10, if I remember those slides correctly. But Ryan, is this something that's tracking as far as, you know, when you look at your applications that are incoming, conversations that you're having?
Yeah, it really is. It's interesting because I was looking, median sales prices are about 480 right now in Maricopa County. And, you know, they're remarkably been stable actually as of late. And this is kind of right in smack dab in the middle, you know, where we're seeing most concessions are right around the median home price. And what we're noticing is that that's a lot of first time home buyers right now are looking kind of in that 300 to 500 range in Maricopa County. So that looks about right because first time home buyers, you know, they might not have as much of a down payment saved. You know, they're obviously going to be more price and rate conscious, you know, trying to get something to hit their budget. So these are the people and these are the buyers that are really trying to find more concessions to help them get to their budget. So that seems about right from what we're seeing.
Yeah, we're definitely having a lot of these conversations. Matt, any take on this?
Yeah. And I think it's probably, you know, kind of highlighting the fact that this is like probably the pool that's having the most activity in sales, volume wise. I bet if we were to look at that and correlate those graphs, you know, and then you really look at that and you say, all right, well, clearly concessions are usually going to be used by someone that's trying to leverage finance, protect their own, you know, their own comfort when it comes to savings and having that little extra money, and leveraging through the bank. As you get more into the higher price points, you're going to have people that definitely have more money. So they're looking at how they can actually, you know, save on their money. So they're not as quick to leverage and pay interest on money they don't need to pay interest on. And I think that's why once you get, you know, definitely above the 600 to 800K range, you see that really drop. So I think that's kind of showing that we're still seeing a lot of activity on there. And then I think when you go the other way, if you look to really see how much is moving, like those are moving pretty quickly. Anything under 300,000, if it's priced right, especially if it's single family, like it's moving.
Oh yeah,
and
with
usually,
multiple offers.
Yeah, so when you get into those type of markets or that exact, you know, product, the seller's not going to have to give concessions because there's more demand for the property. So I think this just really kind of points to that, and I think it's a good thing. Because if you what Ryan just said, that's our median price point. So it's giving good, solid backing to those values. So we might not see, you know, appraisal issues come in very quick that you might usually see when buyer markets are moving in, especially during summer seasons and such. And I think this is supportive to that not happening. So
yeah,
it's good stuff.
Yeah. Agreed. This was an interesting slide for me as well. I was glad to see it. So Matt, from the data that you're tracking, we talked a little bit about it before we hopped on the show. What stands out the most about the current Phoenix market? I guess when we think a couple of months from now, or even a month from now.
No, I think, you know, I'm obviously like I feel like every time I come on, I'm probably optimistic and really saying, hey, I see the light at the end of the tunnel and it's brighter than most people see, but I truly feel it. And I think the data that I'm seeing now is, you know, we look at real time and see what we're in. We've just had, like you said, these peace agreements, not so much peace agreements, excuse me, like ceasefires, mutual consent. That's really eased things. We have oil now dropped. I think it was at 67 today or something like that. It's even lower than before we went into the war. So all these big factors that were driving things. Then I look at it and say, where are we at with our real estate seasonally in Arizona? And usually when we get to this point of the summer, we always see a dip right after 4th of July. Everyone takes off for the summer. Everyone's not in buy mode. We've also got to remember, like, schooling in Arizona is not like the rest of the country. Right. The kids are going back to school at the end of July, beginning of August. So
some in the middle of July.
Yeah, some in the middle of July. So when you really look at that, it's not the ideal time for anyone to say, all right, let's move the family. So
and
when we look at that,
a little warm.
Yeah, then you have that too. So, and I think anyone moving here from out of state's also kind of planning that as well, saying, hey, our summer's kind of just started. Most of the rest of the country's just starting their summer vacation. They're not even really into it a full month yet.
Right.
Right. So we look at that, and the statistics that came out is that we're ahead of the last 2 years as far as buyer demand going into our summer. And I think that's really interesting, especially when you look at the information and the data that we've had for the last 60 to 90 days. You'd probably say we're going to have a tough summer based on that. This kind of seems like we've got some legs. And I know Cromford, we brought this up before, that they were kind of projecting this. If we could stay strong on some of those economic stances and the confidence that buyers had, get to these agreements that we needed to with Iran, address some of these inflationary concerns, this would give consumers that little propulsion to kind of keep going into the summer. And I really think we're seeing that, and which is good, because we haven't seen really rate relief. And that's where I really feel like the slingshot's going to happen, is the second we start to see or hear of things that are really, really like solid, that, hey, it's coming, we're going to see a lot of people jumping off the fence. Lastly, another really cool thing that I was reading was, the lock-in effect. There's a lot of homeowners here in Arizona and across the country that are affected by this. And it's because they have such a low rate. They're like, we really need to have some things happen in our lives to make us feel like we need to walk away from that to get another home. And that's once again, confidence financially in their own situation, the confidence in the future and what they see in their careers and the economy, all of this. And where we're at right now is actually we're leading. So we're 15% better last year at this time when they did a poll on what Americans thought and said, hey, would you be up to moving, getting out of your low rate? We are scoring 15% higher than we did last year at this time. And this was actually taken about 15 days. It was like 15 to 30 days ago. So this was when Iran was still kind of very much
a thing
and very volatile. So I thought that was really interesting. And that means that there's a lot of sellers that are finally saying, we feel good enough that we're ready to buy another house. Doesn't matter about rates. So when you take that mindset and you all of a sudden throw some low rates on top of that, you're going to have an explosion on the seller front that's saying, hey, let's go ahead and do this. We're going to see an explosion on the on these buyers that we were just discussing. So
thank you. One thing that you kind of danced around that I want to ask Ryan, it just made me think of it, is loan assumptions. So you said, hey, there's sellers that are sitting out there on like rates in the 2%, guys. That's crazy. But Ryan, I'm having these conversations here and there, and I got to be honest, like it's not always coming together. In fact, it's very rarely coming together because of the spread, the difference, right? They're needing to find some sort of way to finance that difference if they don't have the cash. But are you having assumption conversations? Are you seeing assumptions happening? What's going on in that world?
Yeah, we're having a lot of the conversations, because I think the news really hit pretty hard last year about assumptions. I don't think very many people were even aware of it. But obviously, as rates have gone up and we had such a period where rates were so low, it obviously became a big talking point. I know we did a Tip Tuesday when it really started getting popular, and I still get random calls on that. It definitely hit hard, and a lot of people viewed that Tip Tuesday. So I appreciate everybody reaching out with questions on that. So I do have the conversation a lot, but it doesn't seem to materialize a lot with actual assumptions. I think you're kind of in the same boat, Katie, because there's a lot of things that have to kind of come into play to do the assumption. First of all, your mortgage has to qualify for it. A lot of them don't, like a lot of conventional loans actually don't qualify for assumptions. Government loans usually only. And on top of that, if you're assuming a loan, you have to bring in the difference between the assumed mortgage and what the home is being purchased for. So let's just say the current seller has a great rate, like a 2.875. They have a $400,000 loan amount, and it's assumable. The buyers want to assume that mortgage, but they're selling it for $700,000. That's $300,000 difference that you need to make up, either with the down payment or a second mortgage. If you do a second mortgage, those rates are a little high. So there's a
Right.
lot of things to consider.
Yeah.
So I think when everybody kind of looks through those options, they're like, oh, it's just better just for me to finance the whole thing. It's too much. But if you need help with it, it's something that we do guide people on. And we actually did help a buyer 2 months ago, even though we weren't involved in it because they're working with the seller's bank.
Mhm.
But they were past clients of ours and we wanted to help them through it. And we were able to help them successfully assume it just by, kind of pushing on that seller's bank to do it. So if you have any buyers who need help kind of going through the process and want some assistance, we're happy to do it.
Thank you for sharing that. And can we just briefly explain why that difference is in the majority of these conversations? In my perspective, it's because if you want a favorable rate, like in the 2s or 3s, that loan was probably originated in what? 2020, 2021, 2022. When did we see the biggest spike in prices?
Yeah, that's
So-
great. Yep, it's mostly 2020 and 2021, and we've seen such a jump after that. Yeah, so
Right.
that's why a lot of people have the equity. They're selling their home and taking advantage of that profit. But the buyers, if they want to assume, have to make up that difference.
Right. Absolutely. Matt, looks like you have something you'd like to add to this conversation.
No, and I think it just kind of supports what Ryan's saying, and Ryan is giving the support to walk consumers through this, pretty challenging process. There's so many moving parts. There's so many different little things that you need to know how to happen and when to happen. And I think that confidence level, to do that is going to be by learning and getting proper information. And I just think a lot of professionals out there, real estate agents and lenders, they don't have that same approach. They don't really understand how to do it. So therefore they're fearful of it. And they're not really bridging that to their seller or their buyer to say, hey, this is an option and I can confidently walk you through this process. If anything, they're more like, you don't want to do that because I don't know how to do it. And that's really kind of preventing people from, I think, taking that step on a lot of this stuff, which makes sense. But it's what a great opportunity. If it aligns to the product that you want and you have the opportunity to do that, that's amazing.
I agree. And thank you for saying that. And I think some listing agents out there are missing out on this little marketing piece. Just put it, if it is an assumable loan, put it in the MLS, guys, because that is going to attract more buyers. There are buyers that are specifically just looking for an assumable loan. I have one right now, and she only wants an assumable loan or, a really great rate at the builder. So we're going back and forth between the two. But it's incredible how many listings I've come across where I've spoken to the listing agent, just had a deeper conversation, and they've said, I guess we could talk about it. It's a government loan. Yeah, I guess we could talk about it being assumable. Guys, have the conversation before you put it on the market and put that in your listing. Like, come on.
100%. And then even as you, the representative that's now if you're representing a buyer going in that's going to be assuming a loan, you've got to understand that this seller's agent is going to be playing a big role in the success of this happening, in coaching their seller and making sure that they're doing things properly. So if there's already a disconnect on that end, it's kind of one of those things you even as a good buyer's agent have to understand and tell you're like, hey, yeah, it's assumable, but this is something we're going to be dealing with. We're going to have to probably educate the seller's agent. We're going to have to hold hands. We're going to have to do a lot of stuff to make it work. But just like anything in life, to get the really good stuff, you got to sometimes work a little bit harder than the rest. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for your input, as always. One thing that I just want to share before we say goodbye, because I think it's important to have information, it's important to have resources, is gpec.org. You can check them out. They are responsible for attracting businesses to the area, to Phoenix, Arizona. And they actually put out quite a bit of information. These two websites in particular, or these two web pages in particular, are really cool, and I feel are very important, especially if you have question on what our economy is doing, what do those numbers look like, and then the conversation that I continue to have week after week is what's going on with our water, what's the status of our water basically right now. So instead of headline surfing, guys, really a good idea to go directly to those who are analyzing this data and looking at this data every day. So I just wanted to share that.
Great resource.
Those are great resources. Absolutely. Especially the water one. I think Chicken Little writes all of the headlines for clickbait. So
yeah, I think so too. He's a busy guy. He works for a lot of media outlets. Thanks again for being with us today, guys. And thank you again to our fans and followers. If you are finding value in these videos, please do us a favor, reach up and click that subscribe or the follow button on whatever platform you are listening or watching on. Our YouTube channel is absolutely awesome and very well organized. So please hop over there. The handle is @TeamEvoAZ. You could scroll down not very far. You will see at the top the Arizona Monthly Housing Market Update. It also has its very own podcast through YouTube, which you can find at the top of the YouTube homepage as well. If you prefer to listen on your favorite podcast platform, please do a quick search for Arizona Real Estate Radio. There you will find us, like, subscribe, all the things, and you will never miss a beat. We will see you guys next time.
Yeah,
Bye.
happy 4th of July, everyone. 250 years of America. Happy birthday.
Have a great 4th, guys.
Bye.
Absolutely. Bye.
Looking to buy or sell in Arizona's hottest neighborhoods? Meet Team Evo AZ, your Arizona real estate experts, driven by data, powered by passion. Meet Matthew Lambert and Katie Holly Lambert, the powerhouse duo behind Team Evo AZ at eXp Realty. With their talented team of agents, they're making Arizona real estate personal and powerful. Trusted, tenacious, Team Evo AZ. Team Evo AZ offers full-service real estate, powered by strategy, experience, heart, and a passion for helping people move forward. Ready to make your move? Visit www.evoaz.com and follow us on social media to connect with us.